Adrian Bernal is a big-time agitator and human rights activist, always out protesting the injustices in the world. He's an award-winning broadcast professional and journalist, having won 2 Gold Pro Max Awards, an Emmy Award, an Addy Award, and 4 Emmy Award nominations in his career with CNN Espanol and Georgia TV. He is currently a contributor to WRFG 89.3 FM Beyond Borders and Vida TV, Atlanta's Hablando con Valdiacera. He's also on the board of the Atlanta Press Club. Ladies and gentlemen, Adrian Bernal.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you here today and we sharing what little I know about this thing we call the media. I started CNN in 1988 at Telemundo CNN, and I had the pleasure of covering some things as the first Gulf War, Tiananmen Square protest, the Berlin Wall coming down. So I've been around the block a little bit, and after about 20 years of doing that, I decided that all the knowledge that we have, we need to do something with it. So I am now an activist. I'm still a journalist, as we heard in the introduction, because I think it's very important. One of the things that, well, I'll back up a little bit. I worked at CNN 88 to 92, then I went to TNT, Cartoon Network, and then I went back to CNN in 2008. So 20 years after I started, I went back to CNN, and we cover such things as the coup in Honduras and, of course, Fukushima earthquake. So I had a really good way of seeing what had happened in those 20 years where we were to where we are now. I was there till 2008 to 2012. People ask me if I think I would want to go back to CNN, and I say no. It's a nice organization. It's not anything like when Ted was running it. However, it is not necessarily the news that you want to get. People always ask me while I was there, how can I get on CNN? And it's always very difficult to do that because they have their own experts. They have people that they go to all the time. There was a recent study by NPR about how many people go about the news, what do you call the mainstream media in different countries. And 98% of them follow the government line. So you don't really get much divergence from what the government's saying. And that's the same thing for CNN, NBC, Fox, everybody. They pretty much are going to tell you that Syria is the enemy, etc. So when you want to get your story on a big network like CNN, people sometimes come and they'll do a demonstration outside of CNN. We are here in Atlanta, so it's very easy for us to go out to CNN and do a demonstration. It doesn't work because CNN has a policy of not covering demonstrations because otherwise everybody would be on their doorstep. However, it does work in that you can let other news outlets know that you're doing this, and so they will come and film you out there. If you do have a story that fits into something they're covering, you can call their assignment desk and offer them your expertise. However, you have to remember that they do have experts. They have people that they contact all the time. And sometimes these experts are paid and sometimes they're not. But they pretty much agree with the line of the story and what is agreed upon that they're going to cover. Another thing we can cover is traditional media versus non-traditional media. Of course, as we heard earlier, we did have someone speaking about that, the news cycle. Traditional media, of course, being radio, AM and FM, newspapers and TV. AM radio, of course, is pretty much a wasteland. You're not going to get anything on there that might agree with what your point is. However, there are certain talk shows that do encourage people to call in. If you go for your Rush Limbaughs or Hannity's, you'll never get on, and they'll cut you off. So, however, I do recommend a strategy of calling, getting a group of people to your local shows and putting a different point of view out there, because that may be something that you may be that may be picked up. If enough people call with a different kind of story or a different angle, then it's a possibility that we can get your voice out there to all of the viewers and listeners that are there. Television, you can call and call the assignment desk. Usually call them a week or two ahead of time. Get to know some friends there. I work with a non-Monsanto organization, and we have made friends with a reporter there, and so they cover our events. So it's real important that you develop a relationship with the people either at the assignment desk or a reporter, get their name, their number, and get them to come out there and cover your story, whatever it is. You also want to develop your own media list, and sometimes this media list, well, it's going to be the usual ones, newspapers, TV, the same thing. Your non-traditional media, of course, radio. We're very lucky here to have WRFG, which is a community station, 42 years of people-powered radio, where you can say anything. We've had a lot of protests on Black Lives Matter, a number of things, gay and lesbian issues. You can definitely get your point across there. Usually these radio stations can be easy for you to volunteer. Here in Atlanta at WRFG 89.3.org. They're also worldwide, so you can get on and you can be heard worldwide. Another point that you can also do is college stations. That's another good way of getting your message out, college stations, and pretty much a group that you might want to reach out to. We also have internet news and YouTube. We have folks that are doing their own newscast, like Hablando con Varios Cera. So, you can get your message across there. Also, of course, Facebook. I use my Facebook a lot to put out things that I find from other Facebook users, and I pretty much use that as a platform to put out my politics and the things that I believe in. You can also use petitions like moveon.org. There are ways to get a lot of information out to your friends and to your viewers. The other thing that you can do is citizen journalism. We have been doing that a lot. I'm a member of the on the board of the Atlanta Press Club, and we recently had a program talking about citizen journalism. One of the people featured was Nydia Tisdale. She is a videographer who is very serious about doing this kind of work. She would go to council meetings, county board meetings, and she would set up her camera and record, and she would then turn over her media to local stations that were not able to get there. Of course, they have limited resources, even if they are big local stations. But she would send it to them, her files unedited, so that they could choose what they wanted to cover. This got her in trouble, and she was covering one of the, it got her in trouble twice. Once she was covering a county board meeting, and she was ejected forcibly and told that she could not record the open meeting. Which of course is a violation of the Constitution. And then the second time where she was covering a rally at Dawson County for the Republican Party, and she was ejected from there as well. She did sue. She sued for being manhandled. She sued for $550,000 for pain and suffering because she was arrested when she refused to turn off her camera. This story has a bright side. She was honored with the First Amendment Foundation of 2015 for open government. and that was earlier this year in September 17th, as a matter of fact. But in her suit, she claimed that they had violated her First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights, and she sued the sheriff's county and a number of other people. So anybody can be a journalist, pretty much. You don't have to go to journalism school. In fact, it's better if you don't. And you have a camera, you have your phone, you have an iPad, and you can record. And these meetings are open, so you should be able to go and record any time or any place that you want. They have to give you access. However, you have to watch out for repercussions. Even if you are a former journalist, we had on the same panel, we had a gentleman from the AJC who had covered numerous political events and found out that he had not been given access to certain events. And so people, although he knew the people that were putting on the events, known them for 20 years, but they said, well, you're not with the AJC anymore. So no, you're not a serious journalist. So we see people are clamping down a lot, organizations, groups, as to who can and who cannot be a journalist. What the Atlanta Press Club does, we do have give credentials to people who are journalists. So you can join the Atlanta Press Club and as a member ask for your credentials. And you can't just be anybody. You have to be somebody who has published some articles or put some stories on YouTube. But this will give you some sort of leverage that you can flash a card at someone and say, I am with the press. But even people who are with the press, you'll remember a couple of years ago, there was an event where a reporter was barred from entering a particular event, Channel 5, as a matter of fact, because they had written unfavorably about the person involved. And so there were standing orders not to let this reporter in. Even if you are a local station, 2, 5, 11, there are times where you will be barred from entering an event or covering an event. We have a Black Lives Matter event where a reporter, 2 cameramen were actually arrested doing their job, recording what's going on. We've also had legislatures like Illinois. They actually did pass, and the governor signed a law making it illegal for people to record the police, record prosecutors, record judges on their phone. That law was struck down and found to be unconstitutional, of course. However, police are still arresting people for recording and filming the police. So that's something that we need to be very aware of, the retaliation that sometimes these organizations have against us doing our job. Another thing that you have to be kind of aware of is where you have your event. There was an event that happened here in Atlanta, January 26, 2015. And there was a group that was calling attention to geoengineering. And they had a number of celebrities that went. Cynthia McKinney was one of them that was supposed to speak at this event. And it was held at the Weather Channel, which is around 285 and 75. It's not downtown. It's kind of tucked away. It's a very central location. Well, it's kind of on the perimeter. However, the people went out there. It was a rainy day, and the media did not show up. So even though it was held at a very proper place, they were trying to call attention to how the Weather Channel is spreading misinformation about geoengineering. It backfired on them because they weren't there. I think it would have been better to have it at the Capitol or some other location where, one, the media can get to, and they can't ignore you because you're out of the way, even if you do have big name people there. So these are a couple of things that you can do to get your message out there. Another thing that I wanted to comment on is where you get your information. Of course, everyone on this call, I'm sure, is aware that the media is pretty much controlled by the government. 50 years ago, we had 50 outlets 50 companies that controlled the media. Now there's only 5. So all your information is filtered by the owners of ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and Fox. Rupert Murdoch. Recently, I heard that National Geographic was now bought by Rupert Murdoch. So, where do you get your news? I'd like RT News. I love to go to country. Al Jazeera, I find a very good source of information for news. And if you speak a different language, I speak Spanish fluently. So I like El País, but definitely go to other sources of news outside of the United States where you can get a better handle on what's going on. Telesur was started by Chavez, president of Venezuela, to counteract what he called the lies that CNN en Español. And so that's where they started that kind of reporting. And of course, you have to keep in mind that whether the news is coming from the official organ of Venezuela or Russia, that they have their own special interests, that they're going to be covering the news from the point of view of their country. But it's reading between the lines that you will hear things, of course, that you may not have heard before. So pretty much that's what I have for you. I'd like to open it up for questions that the rest of the group might have.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I'm so happy to have you here on ACON 3. Your participation is wonderful. You know, you talked about, we do have some questions for you, and you talked a little bit about getting your news from places and some of the problems that particularly independent journalism, alternative media sources is having. And I wanted to get a better feel, have you talk a little bit more about the problem that you have or people have who write. I myself am a journalist, for example, for independent media, alternative media, and when having a discussion with people and how they feel that you're not actually a true media source in comparison to what they're selling, the used cars that they're selling us from mainstream media. I wanted you to expand a little bit more about that, please.
Right. I think that we have limited believability because we're independent people. It's a problem because people wonder why they should believe you and not the mainstream media, which bombard us with the same stuff every day, everywhere. I listen to all the news. I listen to Rush Limbaugh. I listen to Herman Cain. I listen to Hannity because, as the saying goes, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And the stuff that they're giving us is just unbelievable, especially on AM radio. I mean, take, for example, this thing with Donald Trump and the spin. And it's all very coordinated. I'll give you one example. They're talking about how Trump did not defend or did not correct the guy who said that Obama was a Muslim. And this just happened the other day, right, at a town hall meeting. And Hillary Clinton came out, and she demanded that Trump, say something about this guy. And now the right-wing media has given it the spin that it was Hillary in her campaign against Obama who started the rumor that he was a Muslim. Well, I recall that it was Trump himself who offered money to Obama if he would just let him, Trump, look at his birth certificate. But people have such a short memory. And now everybody's repeating this over and over. Oh, well, it was Hillary, it was Hillary, it was Hillary. And no one is correcting them to say, well, no, it was actually Trump way back when who took up the birther issue. So, but yeah, we do have a
is interesting problem in our media world. There's no doubt about it. What ways do you feel for people who are trying to convert information, both from independent media and mainstream media, into usage in their activism? What ways do you feel is the best way for them to do that? For example, would you say how much vetting do you need to have done? You were mentioning different news sources that you look to for more accurate information. What's the best way for activists to take that information and then put it out into their organizations based upon whatever issue it is in your mind?
Right. I think that what I always do and what I tell people, don't believe me, just keep a tally. I mean, you'll hear something from one source, InfoWars, for example. They'll say stuff that's incredible, and you might not want to believe it. But every source, you can take a little bit. You have to read between the lines. And where you see something repeated over and over and over again, you start to paint a picture. So I would say don't go with one traditional source. There's several publications that I get in my inbox, liberal publications. And I find that they too have their own agenda. And I can't really believe them because what they're pushing, like say, for example, vaccines or gun control, and they've made up their mind. Altnet News is one example, and you can't have an opinion contrary to what they're saying because there's no mechanism for you to put up your your point of view. So it's real important, I think, to be able to not tap into one source and say, okay, these are the guys that I'm going to believe in. I think a lot of folks, are pro-gun or anti-gun, but some of these sources have their own agenda. So Altnet News is very anti-gun. They're also very pro-vaccine. During the whole vaccine issue, they were making fun of people who just want the liberty to dictate the doses of the vaccine. A little aside, if you give me a minute, is just I was very pleased to see on the Republican debate how Trump was standing up to the vaccines by pointing out that we have had this huge increase in autism. He mentioned that, and Ben Carson were getting into it. And Carson never addressed the issue of this huge increase in autism. But I'll leave that there. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, you did. No, it's fantastic. And we have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to ask you one more question. What is your opinion and take as far as getting information out there on blogging? Give me a little insight to our activists. So many of them are bloggers and have websites where they have people who are writing about issues. Talk a little bit about blogging and its impact, both for you personally and what you feel about it is for activism in general.
I don't blog. I should probably, but I'm kind of suspicious of bloggers. I think that there's a lot of their own opinion. To me, I think, going back to the question you asked me before, I think it's real important for us to, when we're putting out information, that we can cite where the information came from. And if you can get 3 or 4 sources, that's so much better. And I think gives you a lot of credibility where you're putting out what you know. For a person to pontificate, I was listening to a woman last night, I think it was Dana, on the radio. And I mean, she was just insane. She was giving her opinions. For example, she was talking about a fight that a staffer for Rubio and for Rand Paul, they got into it. And she was saying, that wasn't a scuffle, that wasn't a fight. It was like a chick slapping another chick and the chick crying. And, I think that there's some people that go out there and they put out all this information based on their personal opinion, which I find a little hard maybe to follow because, if you're somebody with a lot of, gravitas, if you're someone who's been in the business for a long time, who's been, following historical stuff forever. Noam Chomsky comes to mind. I listen to Noam speaking about stuff, and I think, okay, I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. Something pretty much 90% of what he says. But I was really disappointed to hear that Noam Chomsky came down against 9/11. Then he came out and he said, well, if a couple of people see a couple of videos on YouTube and now they're experts and they're claiming that they know everything about it. And for a guy that I usually believe in a lot, my beliefs parallel his a lot as far as history and the history of the United States. I was kind of shocked, but maybe not. I mean, you can't really be an expert on everything. But he was pretty much putting down folks. And it isn't just a couple of people. It's the 2,500 architects and engineers who have put out a lot of scientific information about 9/11. And I think that's kind of important. Like I said, you know, the only way for you to convince people that you know what you're talking about is to have the facts and to be able to cite where you're getting this information.
Fantastic. You know, Adrian, thank you so much. Great conversation. We really appreciate you coming on to ACTCon 3. We look forward to working with you in the future. And thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure, and enjoying it, and thank you for doing this. I think ACTCon 3 is definitely something we should do. If you, there is a group here in Atlanta called MIST, and I don't have the information with me, but MIST, and you can find it through WRFG 89.3.org. But what they're doing is trying to train activists, and those folks that have been activists before are trying to train the newer generation of activists. And also something that listeners and viewers might be interested in too is the School of the Americas Watch. It happens in November down at Fort Benning. And if you've never been down there, it's a really great place to meet folks who, and we have seminars and workshops where people talk about all these different kinds of issues. If you have an issue that you want to bring out, I definitely suggest that you should contact soaw.org and talk to them about having a table down there. It happens in Fort Benning, Georgia. We have people coming from as far away as Washington State or New York State. We here in Atlanta, we don't have the participation we should have. And I'm going to be trying real hard to get a huge contingent there. But for all of our viewers, if you can definitely contact soaw.org and talk to them about having a table or having a workshop with your events, or just go down there. Because it is an incredible grouping of activists. This will be my 4th year, and
fantastic.
I'm amazed.
Fantastic.
Thanks a lot, guys. Adrian.
And keep up the good work. Appreciate you coming on, and be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.